Greetings, KenyaYangu. My name is Mugo Kibati, and I am the Director General or Chief Executive Officer of Kenya Vision 2030 Delivery Board and Secretariat. Kenya Vision 2030 Board is responsible for overseeing the implementation of Kenya Vision 2030. Kenya Vision 2030 is Kenya's national development program, which commenced in the year 2008 and runs all the way to the year 2030 with a very specific target of seeing Kenya transformed from a poor, low-income country into an upper-middle-income industrialized nation in which all Kenyans are able to enjoy a high, prosperous quality of life. What has been accomplished so far? Well, we're 5 years down the road now since the commencement of Vision 2030 and 17 years to go. The first 5 years focused primarily on setting the foundations for the overall implementation of Vision 2030. We have 3 pillars in Vision 2030. The economic, where we have 7 sectors: agriculture, tourism, manufacturing, ICT, financial services, trade, and now we're adding oil, gas and minerals, all geared towards creating jobs for Kenyans. The social pillar focuses on education, on health, the environment, affordable housing, clean water and sanitation, while the political pillar focuses on governance institutions, judicial reform, police reforms, electoral reforms, national cohesion. In the first 5 years, we have actually managed to pass the constitution. And in the passing of the constitution, many of the political pillar reforms are now well underway: judicial, police, electoral reforms. The 3 pillars that I've talked about are buttressed by what we refer to as the enablers or the foundations: infrastructure, public sector reforms, macroeconomic policy, as well as science, technology and innovation. So in the first 5 years, I should say, the focus was on the political pillar as well as these enablers. So a lot was done in infrastructure: roads, rail, ports, airports, energy, fiber optic communications, all geared towards ensuring that we prepare the ground, we lay the ground for the economic and social pillar implementation in later years. I would say, however, that the most important development of the first 5 years was the change in mindset in Kenyans, in that now, as opposed to 5-10 years ago, Kenyans have much higher expectations of their leaders. No longer will leaders get away with promising, filling of potholes, for instance, or little piddly projects. Kenyans now expect to see multi-lane highways, new railway stations, new ports, new airports. We have airports across the country. Kisumu International Airport, a brand new airport, was built in those 5 years. Isiolo, the runway is complete. We're now going to build the terminal. Lamu has a new airport. Jomo Kenyatta International Airport is being reformed with a new 4th unit and refurbishing of the other terminals, as well as the preparation for ground for a new airport altogether. Lamu Port, a brand new greenfield port, ground has been broken. We have dredged Mombasa Port, deepened it from 13 meters to 15 meters, allowing larger vessels to come in. We are automating not just Mombasa Port and Jomo Kenyatta Airport, but all border points, such that come a year, by the end of 2014, what takes you 7 days to clear from Mombasa Port will now take you 3 days. What takes you 5 days at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport will now take you 1 day. All this have begun to set expectations of leaders amongst Kenyans, both at the national and county level, and I would say that has been the biggest, in my view, change or transformation of the last 5 years. How will the new government and its policies and its platform, the Jubilee government that is, impact Vision 2030? Well, I'm happy to let you know that the Jubilee manifesto was completely aligned to Vision 2030. In fact, both the Jubilee Cord and Amani manifestos all hewed to Vision 2030, because recall, Vision 2030 is now the overall national development policy for the entire country. And that is entrenched in sessional paper number 10 of 2012 on Kenya Vision 2030 that was passed by Parliament at the end of last year. So happily, the Jubilee Manifesto has hewed largely to Vision 2030. So many of the projects, programs that I have mentioned are part of the Jubilee program. So you'll find that infrastructure development in terms of roads, rail, ports, airports are part of the Jubilee program. Education reforms, ensuring that every child between the age of 4 and 18 is in school. Last year, we undertook a major reform of the education sector. We have a new Education Act passed early this year that ensures that there is 100% transition from the age of 4 to 18 by law, which is a Jubilee policy and is part of Vision 2030. Social sector programs such as health, affordable housing are part of the Jubilee Manifesto and Vision 2030. Additionally, the President and the Jubilee government are committed to ensuring the full implementation of the new constitution, devolution, judicial reforms, police reforms. In fact, judicial reforms are now well underway. We are now hopeful that with this new financial year coming up and the first budget of President Uhuru Kenyatta, police reforms will now be fast-tracked with social welfare, enhancing the social welfare of policemen, reforming the curriculum of policemen, buying new equipment and modernizing them, increasing the numbers of policemen in this country. So too will the prosecutor's office be enhanced and reformed. So you will find that the Jubilee Manifesto will actually, in my view, fast-track the implementation of Vision 2030 because they're completely aligned. We're very optimistic. Now is a very optimistic time for this country. We have had very peaceful elections, contrary to many in the international arena who thought otherwise or expected otherwise. And not only have we had peaceful elections, but we've had the institutions of that new constitution tested, tried and tested and come through. The IEBC, the Electoral and Boundaries Commission, which many people faulted, and indeed the High Court, the Supreme Court itself faulted, did come through and will require reform. That was the first test of that particular electoral, of the electoral reforms in the new constitution. The Supreme Court itself, a creation of the new constitution, passed the test, in my view, with flying colors in a contested election, coming up with a unanimous judgment that all parties accepted. So the implementation of the new constitution and institutions are part of the Jubilee government's commitment to this country and will only serve to further enhance the implementation of Vision 2030. How can citizens participate in Vision 2030? How can KenyaYangu be of value and supportive to Vision 2030? Well, let me start by saying, first and foremost, understand Vision 2030. Read Vision 2030. By the way, our website is www.vision2030.go.ke, and I'll repeat that, vision2030.go.ke. I think all citizens, KenyaYangu community, can just start by understanding what our objectives are in Vision 2030. Where is Kenya today? What progress has been made over the last 5 years? And there's been tremendous progress, and the first of its kind in this country and in this region, by the way, for many years. Once you've done that, then it is whatever you do in your own life, because as you might have guessed from my description of Vision 2030, it's very comprehensive, it's very broad, touches literally every sector of society, from the social to the economic to the political, talks about infrastructure. So whether you're a teacher, a doctor, an engineer, an artisan, somebody who works at the port of Mombasa, or is a farmer, you have a contribution to make to Vision 2030. And you must ask yourself, what is your own Vision 2030 goal as an individual, as a family, as an institution? Where do you see yourself in the year 2030? Where do you see your daughter or your son in the year 2030? Do you have your own goals and objectives? You must have some. And indeed, the idea and the notion of Vision 2030 is to begin to get us to think differently, to stop us being short-termist, to encourage us to engage in delayed gratification. For instance, we need to save. We have a very low savings rate in this country, 14%. We need to raise that savings rate to about 30%. And for that to happen, all of us, as citizens of this country, must do our part in saving for our own futures. So that's the easy part. When you are choosing leaders, how do you assess your leaders and how do you select them? Do you automatically, could I have guessed, simply by knowing what your last name is, Could I have guessed in the last election who you voted for as president? Or did you undertake an assessment of your own objectives as an individual, where you want Kenya to be, assess the leaders, and on the basis of a values-driven system, not tribalism, not ethnicity, not parochialism, or not personal self-interest, did you select your leaders on the basis of what your objectives are and what the objectives of this country are? And specifically to KenyaYangu, because we have had a lot of negativity in Kenya, by the way. Oftentimes we blame international media, we blame the foreign press, but many times they pick up what we say about ourselves, about our country, and broadcast it. We must begin to see the positive in Kenya. Some of you live in different parts of the world. Some of you live in the United States of America, in the UK, in Europe. You have seen how these nations brand themselves, how citizens of the US, of the UK, talk about themselves. And indeed, doesn't mean they're perfect. Even in the middle of the Iraqi war, United States citizens had positive things to say about their country. You watched the Olympics, the London Olympics last year, and that whole opening ceremony. How much of colonialism did you see in the whole montage they displayed? It was just about the greatness of the UK. And no one the following day, not in the media, not the citizens, said, hey, wait a minute. That was a lie. You guys missed out the colonial part, how you conquered African countries and took all their stuff, and how you were part of the slave trade before William Wilberforce. The thing is, most nations have patriots. Most nations that have developed and are doing well, from China in the east to the US in the west, are patriots. Help us. KenyaYangu can help us build a level of patriotism and nationhood that will actually propel Vision 2030, because I feel strongly that when Kenyans begin to see themselves first and foremost as Kenyans and focus on the Kenyan project, not the Kikuyu nation or the Luo nation or the Kalenjin nation, but the Kenyan nation, then we will actually fast track Vision 2030 to come back to 2020 as opposed to 2030. So I think that KenyaYangu, as you're constituted, in fact the very objectives that you have for rebranding our nation, for making us patriots, and for making us think collectively as a nation, just focusing on that will help accelerate the implementation of Vision 2030. Thank you all very much.